A minor 2-second stumble in public instantly mutates into a lifelong, paralyzing belief that you are entirely unlovable. Why exactly does the human mind obsessively torture itself over moments that have long since passed? We treat overthinking like a modern epidemic, searching for clarity in the very thoughts that created the confusion in the first place. Our deepest suffering rarely comes from the actual events of our lives. It comes from our mind's outright refusal to let those events end. In the early 20th century, Japanese philosopher Nishida Kitarō bypassed standard self-help entirely to investigate the dense, complex nature of reality itself. This diagram models his concept of pure experience. Notice how life's raw data appears on its own, before the brain creates labels, before we judge, and before the mind separates me from the world. There is only the seamless, unified act of experiencing. Nishida realized that negative emotions are innocent in their raw form. The true difficulty begins with what the brain constructs 3 seconds after an emotion hits. We aren't really reacting to the world anymore. We are reacting to the immediate, fabricated commentary our brain invents about the world. We live on 2 separate tracks every day. We have to constantly distinguish between what is physically occurring and what the mind is narrating. Think about waiting for a job interview. The physical reality is simply a fast heartbeat and a tight stomach. The mind then spins a story. If I fail this, my life is ruined. You stare at glowing pixels on a screen, yet your mind generates the crushing dread of falling behind in life. Language works as a trap here. It takes a temporary, passing feeling, like making a single mistake, and freezes it into a permanent psychological identity, labeling you a failure. Nishida viewed reality as a flowing river, constantly in motion. When we overthink, we try to freeze that flowing water into static, manageable ice cubes. By forcing dynamic, living moments into rigid labels, we actively construct the very anxiety we are desperately trying to escape. This raises a difficult question. If you aren't the static, anxious person or failure that your brain insists you are, then who actually are you? This loop illustrates Nishida's view of self-consciousness. The ego emerges from reflection, brought into existence solely through this continuous internal signal. Interrupt that constant internal narration of I am this and I am that, and the rigid ego loses its solidity. Under this framework, the self remains an ongoing activity, a direct expression of the world unfolding, rather than a finished object to be discovered. This logic aligns closely with Zen principles. It points toward who you are in that split second before memory and labels arise to define you. While this logic helps diffuse daily anxieties, the ultimate test is how it holds up against the devastating weight of real, profound grief. Because reality is always richer than the concepts we place upon it, the self exists by flowing, much like a river that only disappears when it stops moving. When it comes to deep suffering, Nishida's philosophy is especially compassionate. Returning to pure experience focuses on acknowledging the raw feeling without the added weight of judgment. Pure experience naturally includes immense sadness. If you face loss, Nishida would never ask you to suppress your tears or pretend the pain isn't there. Grief is a natural physical response, yet the intellect often bolts a catastrophic story onto that pain, insisting life has ended. Resilience comes from the ability to feel devastating pain purely, allowing the emotion to move through you without turning it into a permanent story of despair. You don't have to stop thinking to find relief. You just have to demote thought from your primary identity down to a mere tool. Whenever a strong emotion hits, pause and ask yourself, what am I directly experiencing right now before the story begins? Focusing on the raw physical data, the rhythm of your breath or the sound of the room, breaks the loop of self-reference that fuels the ego. When we stop mistaking our mental narratives for our actual being, the exhausting need to defend a separate, flawed self begins to dissolve. Nishida suggests that our foundation is that first moment of experiencing, the immediate reality where every thought and emotion surfaces before the mind starts its commentary.